when was that moment for you when you realized that money had become your source, or like it was like your false god, and you really thought that it was going to give you something, and then you realized, oh, it didn't give me what it promised, and I've been following the wrong thing.
Yeah, well, so I got sued for a real estate commission that I knew I had the equitable side of the facts. Like what I was doing was honorable and right, and I was dead certain about it. And the lawsuit came in 2008, if I remember right, which was, if you recall, the real estate bubble had just burst. And my business, we had about 50 employees between the 5 companies that we were running, and they were starting to have to do layoffs because the real estate market had just imploded. You couldn't get financing anymore, and people weren't buying office condominiums. And so there was no more work for the construction company, no more brokerage transactions, and everything was starting to shrink. And I had just bought out my partner in the business with the funds from this $800,000 commission. It was one of the largest transactions I had ever done on a single day, made over $800,000 in commissions on a multi-tiered office condominium project that had 11 closings in one day. And what happened was there was a residential real estate agent who had shown his home builder client this piece of raw dirt that we were going to build this office condominium project on. And we had a meeting. I had a meeting with him and the residential builder one day, and told him, look, if you want to do this transaction, you have to do it quick because we've already got other buyers in place for these office condos. And he wanted to make it a corporate headquarters for his home building, for his home builder's office. And he said, okay, what do you mean by right away? And I'm like, well, like within 30 days, you got to be hard with $500,000. He said, done deal. Well, he signed the deal. He puts the money up, and I tell the residential agent, okay, he's like, well, what kind of fee do I get for this? I said, well, you're the procuring cause. You get a 3% fee. So he's loving life. And then what happens during that 30 days, his home builder client comes to me and he says, hey, I'm not going to be able to move forward on this transaction. I want out. And I said, well, your money's non-refundable. And he said, well, what if I get these other guys to come in and take the deal? I'm like, oh, yeah, you can assign the deal. If they'll do it on the exact same terms, I'm fine with that. So sure enough, he did that. And he made an assignment, and I never talked to the residential agent or him again for the next year because this was just a raw piece of dirt. So we're building the project. The new guys hire me to put it back into office condominium projects. So I'm selling these office condos. And about 30 days before the completion of the project, they get a call from this residential agent. And he's like, hey, so I understand that project's about to close escrow. And here's why I want you to send the commission. And I said, what are you talking about? I'm like, who did you represent in this transaction? And he said, well, the home builder. And I said, yeah, but he's not buying the project. And I said, here's the guys who are buying the project. I'll call them and ask them if you're representing them. So I call them, and they're like, we don't even know who this guy is. So I call them back, and I said, hey, these guys don't know who you are. You did refer, your guy came in. I'll tell you what would be fair to me is I'll give you a referral. I'll give you a 20 to 25% as a negotiated referral fee. There's no set law on this. And it would have been about $100,000 to this guy for coming to one meeting. And he said, no, not going to do it. And I said, okay, well, good luck getting paid because the guys who you say you represent say they don't know you, and the title, you're not in the transaction documents. So I don't know how you're going to get paid. The deal closes, and then he finds an attorney and he sues me. And the attorney who took his case took it on a contingency basis, and he put a second on this residential real estate agent's horse ranch in Scottsdale, Arizona, so that he didn't have to pay any money up front. And the residential agent thought that he was suing. He didn't realize he had the wrong company in his mind, because my partner was a guy by the name of Dale Cavan. So the name of our company was Cavan Commercial. And his dad was a huge developer in Scottsdale, Arizona. Massive notoriety. And that's who this attorney thought he was suing. And so that's why he did the contingency deal. By the time he found out he had the wrong guy, and this wasn't just going to be a nuisance suit that he was going to settle, he had already run up $100,000 worth of legal fees, and he had the guy's house pledged. So I
Wow.
kept telling the guy, "Hey, look, I'll still pay you the referral less any real legal fees that you make me incur on trying to make this thing go away." And he's like, "I can't settle. My legal fees are already more than what you're offering me." So again, I'm thinking, well, we're going to win for sure because the guy didn't do anything. He couldn't have possibly earned a $400,000 fee, which is what the lawsuit was coming for. And sure enough, I'm sitting through the jury trial. Now, by the way, the trial, by the time it actually happens, it's 2008. So now I, I'm making a fraction what I used to make. The money that had been set aside from this commission, I used to buy out my old partner. And so I didn't have the money to pay him. And the jury trial, you know how I always joke, there's only like 1% of disputes make it all the way through to a jury trial. This was one of them. And the jury trial was comprised of eight, I can't remember if it was 7 or 8 women, two of which were homeschool moms. And, you know, there was a teacher. I mean, nobody who knows anything about real estate. And all of their context was around the idea of a real residential agent being a procuring cause. Well, that doesn't exist in commercial real estate, but there's only one license. There's one license for all realtors, even though the commercial real estate agents play a whole separate game. And so that's how they won the case, because they determined that this guy was the procuring cause, even though the guy in the when the my attorney asked his client, my client, if he knew who the plaintiff was, and he's sitting in the courtroom, the guy who's supposedly owed this $400,000 fee for representing him, he's like, "No, I can't identify him. I don't know who the guy is."
Wow.
And so I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to lose this lawsuit all the way through. But there's a key element here that crippled the case, which is my attorney that said, you know, under the law, because the referrals are like customs, but they're not law. So if you tell the court that you had made this offer for the referral, then that's going to imply that you owed the whole fee. Why would you make an offer to give somebody $100,000 if you didn't owe it to them? And I'm like, because
Uh,
that's the customary practice. Of course, it only makes sense. And he's like, no, I don't think we should put that into the evidence. So what they did instead, the opposing attorney, made me look like the big bad uh, commercial real estate broker taking advantage of the residential agent.
uh,
And I could not believe that I lost that lawsuit. And so now I have, you know, after the commission, the legal fees, and all the other interest and all the things, the judgment was like $850,000 or something like that.
wow.
And that's when I realized I had made money my God. That judgment had wiped me out. I was going to have to file bankruptcy. My company was falling apart. My The people who worked for me now thought I was a criminal because of the judgment, you know, and it was just an awful ordeal. And that's when I said, I'm giving it all up. Well, I didn't say that. God took it all away from me, is how I see it now, because I wouldn't give it up. And that's what began my new understanding of how corrupt, well, that is part of it, you know,